Some stories are unforgettable. This is one of them.
3 people come to me wearing suits, and one of them tells me that he hadn't made it. And I was like, no, he did. Just go check. They come back and tell me Miss Polly's husband didn't make it.
The case hinged on a split-second decision, one fueled by a rage so hot it seared into my memory. 2 women racing down a Texas highway.
She saw me and then made the U-turn.
Bonnie, the mistress, in one lane.
I looked at my rearview mirror and it was Frances.
Frances, the wife, in the other.
I get her little finger,
The middle finger?
right? I start following her. I said, what the hell? She breaks, and I break, and I hurt a thumb.
He's pronounced dead at the hospital.
Loss and regret would echo throughout this story. 2 women in love with one man, hating each other. But jealousy was never far out of sight. It was a romantic rivalry as ugly as I've ever covered.
You're getting text messages from Bonnie of the 2 of them having sex.
A Hollywood love story?
This was the man I wanted to marry.
Or a fatal attraction?
He goes, I can't get rid of this person.
And so many about to lose so much.
Why? I will live with that for the rest of my life.
This is Datline Unforgettable. I'm Andrea Canning with a fresh look at Collision. This is the story of 2 fiery women battling for the heart of one much-loved man. It's about sex, secrets, and lies. Red-hot Texas passion and a bitter feud. All leading to a final showdown on a 2-lane highway.
Bear County 911. I got a black X-ray and a black Range Rover. They're all asking me to be back on the video.
A high-speed chase that went horribly, horribly wrong.
It was a nightmare.
When the dust settled, one life would be over, many others shattered.
We all lost her.
And the final chapter, passion would write that one too. San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the Hall family. 3 generations of truckers with deep roots in the city. It was here that Bill Hall met the love of his life at the tender age of 16. Her name was Frances.
What happened the first time you laid eyes on Bill?
I just fell in love with him. I knew this was the man I was going to marry.
At 16?
At 16.
They married right out of high school. A year later, daughter Nikki was born.
Were your parents in love? Oh, yes. We definitely saw love growing up in the house.
I love my baby.
Bill worked hard to give his young family a better life.
Bill used to clean airplanes. He went to college. And on the weekends, if he was off, he'd go dig ditches. We made ends meet.
But his true passion was big rigs. So one day, he up and quit school, started his own business, Bill Hall Jr. Trucking.
That's what his family did for a living, so it's in their blood.
Bill got his first truck and went to work delivering topsoil, while Frances hit the phones to drum up new business.
He was a dreamer, and he always said, I'm going to go big, vieja. Vieja is a Hispanic term which means old lady.
After just a few years, Bill and Frances turned that one truck into a fleet of 130. At its height, their empire was valued at more than $15 million.
All his dreaming paid off.
And hard work. He put his life, his heart, and soul into it. Bill was Bill Hall Jr. Trucking.
Sitting across from Frances, I could see her glowing with pride as she talked about Bill and his climb to the top. Eventually, she told me he stopped driving the big rigs and oversaw the fleet while she took care of the books. I was really impressed by their rags to riches story. But for Bill, it wasn't all work and no play. He liked to live on the edge.
He was a daredevil. He loved racing in his later years. He loved hunting. He was a man's man.
And also a bit of a ladies' man, according to Bill's cousin Hank.
You know, beautiful women, you work hard, you play hard, and you do things, that you're not supposed to be doing. He was a great man, but he was not the perfect man.
Bill's imperfections became painfully clear nearly 32 years into their marriage when Frances says she got a call from a mysterious woman. It was September 13th, 2013, Friday the 13th.
She goes, "You don't know me, but I'm having an affair with your husband."
Wow.
I was in shock.
Heartbroken, furious, Frances says she confronted Bill and asked, was it true?
By that time, he is crying and telling me that he's sorry, that it's true. I was devastated,
This is 3 decades of marriage.
and I finally asked him, "How long has this been going on?" He cried again, told me 3 years. And I go, "This is not an affair, this is a relationship."
About that, and only that, she and the other woman agreed. You don't like the word mistress, do you?
No, I don't.
This is Bonnie Contreras. What is it about that word that bothers you?
Mistress, it just sounds like I don't want to say, that I was the side person because I was more than that to him. This man was the man I wanted to marry and spend the rest of my life with.
Bonnie was a 28-year-old single mom when they met, about 20 years younger than Bill and Frances. She said their love affair bloomed in the most unlikely of places.
I met him at a spinach festival.
Spinach?
Spinach festival. I was helping my aunt sell chicken on a stick, believe it or not. I know it sounds kind of corny, but that's how I met him.
Bill happened to stroll by that chicken stand with some friends.
As soon as I saw Bill, we kind of just locked eyes.
Bonnie was intrigued enough by this handsome older gentleman to sneak a peek at his ring finger.
No wedding ring. No mark. I figured he's single.
According to Bonnie, the two started to spend nearly every day together.
I fell in love with him. I didn't expect it. It's not something that I was looking for at all. I love my honey.
Bonnie said Bill told her he was separated from his wife and going through a divorce.
And I took his word. I never again bothered him about it.
He affectionately called her his Gorda, his chubby lady. And during their 3 years together, Bill lavished Bonnie with attention. Spa days, vacations,
Bonnie, can I feel the love?
and even breast implants.
I wasn't that big. I was maybe a small bean. And he goes, go do him. We'll pay for him.
And then, she says, a 5-carat diamond ring.
It meant love. It meant friendship. It meant a future together.
Bonnie told me Bill placed that ring on her wedding finger, and that's where she wore it when I sat down with her. It seemed Bill was leading a full-fledged double life. Frances told me she'd never even heard of Bonnie until that phone call. But like much of this story, Bonnie had the completely opposite point of view. Bonnie denies calling Frances out of the blue. She says Frances had known about the relationship for years, and that the two women even spoke by phone about the financial arrangements of a divorce.
Who was going to keep what? And, she was just going on and on about the properties and about money, about the company. And I said, I'm not even asking for none of that stuff. I don't want none of it.
Whichever version was true, the two women had never met. Cousin Hank told Bill he needed to break it off with Bonnie before something bad happened.
I said, you need to get out of that relationship. Don't turn back.
Did you kind of feel like, hey, Bill, you're playing with fire? And
That's exactly what I told him. I said, you need to go fix this, man. Fix your house. Frances threw him out. He went back to Bonnie, and he would go back to begging Frances to go back. He was very confused. I had never seen Bill in it. Never in my life.
Frances was conflicted too. Take Bill back or kick him out for good? The morning of October 9th, her anger boiled over.
He was brushing his teeth, and I glanced over, and I was enraged.
She started pulling his hair, tussled with him all around the house. Bill appeared to take the assaults as a joke.
He was doing these little dances he does, and it upset me so much. And I kicked him, and he goes, "Stop already." I go, "No."
She went after his prized possessions, knocking over his custom Harley Davidson and hitting their new Range Rover with a stick.
He pushed me down, I fell down, and he took off and waved at me, smiling.
The following day was rough for Frances. Her family coaxed her out of the house to watch her niece's volleyball game. Then, on her way home, driving her Cadillac Escalade,
And I see Bill in his bike. In back of Bill, I see the Range Rover. And I'm like, who is that?
the vehicles were coming toward her in the opposite lane. And as they passed, Frances did a double take. Sitting behind the wheel of her family's brand new Range Rover was Bill's mistress, Bonnie Contreras. Frances said they locked eyes for the first time.
And of course I get her little finger,
Like the middle finger?
right, and I keep going.
Furious, she called her daughter Nikki.
She said, I'm turning around, I'm going to confront her.
What did you say to your mom?
I said, good, just be careful.
Not likely. All hell was about to break loose. Coming up, two women now on a collision course. Frances follows through on her threat.
I make the biggest choice of my life. I pulled over and I turn around.
When Dateline Unforgettable continues. October 10th, 2013. Here on this stretch of San Antonio Highway, two women vying for one man spotted each other for the first time. Frances, the wife, and Bonnie, the mistress.
I make the biggest choice of my life. I pulled over and I turn around.
Turned around to chase down her romantic rival. How fast are you going?
I'm doing about 65, 70. She's in a super sport Range Rover. This thing will go fast. My Range Rover.
Frances stepped on the gas and soon had Bonnie in her sights.
I'm asking her to pull over. She'd tell me no. Pull over. And no. She kept playing this cat and mouse game. She kept braking.
She said Bonnie repeatedly slammed on the brakes, forcing Frances to slam on hers. Frances had a large slab of granite in the back of her Escalade from a home renovation project.
So I can hear this piece of granite every time I brake because it moves.
As Bonnie accelerated, Frances stayed on her. It was as if she had developed tunnel vision, could focus on only one thing.
I'm going to confront her. I'm done. I've had it with her. I'm going to tell her, you want him? Keep him.
The him in all of this, Bill, had been riding his motorcycle in front of Bonnie. But as the chase unfolded, he suddenly slowed down.
All this time, Bill is in front of us, and I see Bill pulling over, and she's passing him.
Then, Frances said, Bill dropped back to her right.
And I'm passing Bill. I see Bill from my passenger window, and she brakes. And I brake, and I heard something. I heard a thump.
That piece of granite again, Frances thought. And she continued to chase after Bonnie, still hell-bent on confronting her. Suddenly, Bonnie made a U-turn.
And as she makes a U-turn, I make the U-turn. She takes off.
I got a black Escalade and a black Range Rover. They're traveling in a high rate, 90, 100 miles an hour, that black Range Rover was.
An off-duty officer spotted Bonnie and Frances and called it in.
They're hauling ass driving on the wrong side of the road. Back on the video.
Frances was still on Bonnie's tail when
I hear this wind coming in.
the howl of the wind snapped Frances out of her trance. She looked back and realized her third-row passenger window was shattered. And then she realized something else. She couldn't see Bill anywhere. Frances called her sister Connie, who lived close by. Then she called her daughter Nikki.
She goes, I can't find your dad. I don't know where your dad is. I'm turning around.
Frances started to make her way back down the highway. She spoke to Connie again.
My sister tells me I found him.
Connie had jumped in her own car and soon came upon Bill and his bike by the side of the road. He'd crashed and was in bad shape. Police were already at the scene when Frances arrived.
And then as I'm running to him, an officer grabs me and I yank him. I heard somebody yell, that's his wife, leave her alone. And I get down to where he's at, and he's alive.
Do you say anything to him?
I was just in shock. And he kept telling me, I can't breathe. Yeah. And I told him, calm down, Dad. Calm down.
Bill had internal injuries. Whatever happened, the wreck was so severe it even knocked his boots off.
Therefore, here comes your bird.
They took him away in the helicopter.
They got a gurney, and he grabbed my arm. He goes, yeah, come with me. I go, I'm coming, Dad. And they take him, and I remember he told them, she needs to come with me.
But officers wouldn't allow Frances in the chopper, wouldn't allow her to go anywhere, in fact.
And I told the officer I'm his wife. And he said, turn around. And he handcuffed me, put me in the back, and they left with Bill.
It was only then, Frances says, that it all came together in her mind. The thump The broken window. Somehow, Bill's bike and her Escalade must have collided. I think some people might find it hard to believe that you wouldn't realize that you had hit a motorbike.
I didn't feel anything. I heard a thump. I thought it was this piece of granite.
Police detained her for questioning, while the rest of the family took up a vigil at the hospital. Bill's cousin was hopeful he'd pull through.
Well, we had been in so many wrecks on bikes and stuff. I said, he'll be all right. He had worse accidents than that, so.
But Bill wouldn't be all right. Not this time. When they told us that he had passed away, it was just complete shock. Frances was still in the back of the patrol car when she got the news.
I noticed 3 people come to me wearing suits, and one of them tells me that he hadn't made it. And I was like, "You're full of it." I go, "No, he did." I go, "Just go check." They come back and tell me Miss Holly's husband didn't make it.
With Bill dead, Frances was not only a grieving widow, she was now clearly a suspect. Police took her to the station for questioning, but she wasn't ready to answer anything. Frances appeared to be in denial. But if Frances wasn't talking to the police, the other woman in Bill's life was, and she said Bill's death was no accident. Coming up, Bonnie's story, terrifying.
I'm driving and I feel somebody hit me from behind.
When Dateline Unforgettable continues. On his last day on Earth, Bill Hall was staying with girlfriend Bonnie Contreras. The two had plans to pick up Bill's motorcycle at a storage facility for a bike rally they'd attend the next day.
And he was laying in our bed, taking a nap, and that was 2 hours before he died. I woke him up and I said, "Hon, it's getting late." I said, "We gotta go pick up the bike before it gets dark."
And that, Bonnie said, is how she and Bill ended up on the road that fateful evening. With Bonnie behind the wheel of the Range Rover, Bill in front of her on his baby blue motorcycle. Neither of them knowing that Frances, quite by chance, was coming from the opposite direction. But Bonnie's version of events would differ sharply from the tale Frances told.
He's driving, I'm driving. Somewhere along the way, we stopped at a light, and he pulled up beside me in the other lane. He tells me, "I love you so much, Gorda." He's like, "I'm so happy." And that was the last time I heard his voice.
The light turned green, and everything changed.
He was in front of me, and I'm driving, and I feel somebody hit me from behind. At first, I thought it was an accident.
A sudden jolt, then another.
I feel another hit, and I said, "What the hell?" And I looked through my rearview mirror, and it was Frances.
Bill's wife. They'd spoken by phone, but never met. Bonnie said she never saw Frances on the road before she felt those jolts, never taunted her with her middle finger, as Frances claimed. Now, Bonnie said Frances wasn't just chasing her, she was actually repeatedly ramming her Cadillac Escalade into the back of the Range Rover.
I started screaming because she wouldn't stop hitting me. She kept ramming her vehicle into me.
She said Frances's story, that Bonnie kept slamming on her brakes, was nonsense. I find it fascinating how two people can experience the same exact incident and come away with two completely different stories. As a journalist, I always want to present each side, but in this story, it was hard for me at times to know who was telling the truth. You were accused of
Brake checking her. No, I was trying to get away from that woman. So I started speeding up, and she kept ramming me from behind, and she threw me onto oncoming traffic.
Bonnie said she was hit so hard, her purse fell off the front seat.
Right, and my stuff flew to the floor.
And here, another significant difference from Frances's version. Bonnie says that when she swerved back into her lane, she looked in her rearview mirror and saw Bill was now riding behind her, between the two SUVs.
And I see her coming up behind Bill, and I'm yelling at the top of my lungs. And I see her hit Bill, and I see Bill fly, and then I see the bike fly.
According to Bonnie, she saw Frances deliberately hit Bill from behind, then keep chasing her.
I was shaking and I was in shock. I didn't understand why she hadn't stopped when she hit Bill. I couldn't understand it. I still don't understand it. I felt like stopping, but I didn't know if she had a gun. And my first instinct is to make a quick U-turn.
So she does a U-turn too?
Yes, she's right behind me.
She's still hitting you?
She continues to hit me. And we even passed the scene of where Bill is clinging to his life. And even at that, she didn't bother to stop hitting me.
Bonnie eventually made her way back to where Bill lay by the road.
And I see just hecticness everywhere. Police cars, detectives, ambulance.
She said she tried to get to Bill, but the officers wouldn't let her near him.
No, I wanted to hug him. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him everything was going to be okay.
Bonnie watched the helicopter take Bill away. Hours later, a police officer gave her the news she was dreading.
He goes, Bill has passed away. And I just let out a big old scream.
So there was Bonnie's version. This was no accident. Francis purposely rammed her repeatedly and fatally knocked Bill off the road. Is there only one person to blame for this in your eyes?
Of course. It's Francis. She started that high-speed chase. She chose to turn around. Why? You know you're going to cause some sort of trouble.
And when investigators looked at the evidence and heard Bonnie's version of events, they came to the same conclusion. Nico LaHood was the district attorney of San Antonio.
The bottom line for us was this: objectively, we do not support this behavior.
Francis was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon for chasing after Bonnie. And for the death of her husband, Bill Hall Jr., she was charged with murder.
We felt that there was an attempt at an aggravated assault, and in that process, a life was lost, which gives felony murder.
But Francis said the real aggressor was Bonnie, and she said she had proof. Coming up, Francis says Bill told her that Bonnie was obsessed with him, but that he wanted out.
He goes, I can't get rid of this person.
When Dateline Unforgettable continues. Francis Hall was out on bail, facing a murder charge for the high-speed chase that ended with the death of her husband, Bill. The key witness against her, Bill's mistress, Bonnie Contreras. But according to Francis and her daughter, if anyone should be blamed for what happened, it was Bonnie. She has a lot of responsibility, or full responsibility, in causing this. She ruined a family. The way the Hall family tells it, Bonnie was a gold digger, a stalker, and a liar who had been manipulating and threatening Bill for years. Francis said that after she learned about the affair, she learned the truth about Bonnie from Bill himself.
He laid it all out. He said, I am going to tell you everything, vieja.
The family insists Bonnie told Francis about the affair because she was angry over, of all things, a manicure.
She was upset because my father wouldn't give her $100 to get her nails done.
They said Bill told them that Bonnie had been stalking their whole family on Facebook.
She had created a fake account with a fake profile picture, and friend requested the entire family. Everyone except my mom had her, I had her, aunts, uncles, cousins.
The family said Bill told them that's how Bonnie gathered information that she would use to manipulate him.
If we went on a trip as a family, or if he took my mother to Las Vegas immediately after, he would have to take her somewhere.
According to Francis and Nikki, Bill said he wanted to break up with Bonnie, but she threatened to air their affair all over the internet.
He goes, I can't get rid of this person.
Francis said Bill told her Bonnie also stalked her and her family.
She knew where my kids lived. She knew my schedule. He said that I would go to my grocery store and she'd be there following me.
Even, said the Halls, followed her and Bill into a movie theater.
Bonnie tracked them and was sitting 3 rows behind them. She was kind of like a fatal attraction, just or psycho.
She claims that she was in love with Bill, that he was going to leave you, they were going to start a family, they were going to be married.
She got an abortion. Tell me if she was starting a family. She got an abortion.
Bill wanted Bonnie to have an abortion, said Francis, but Bonnie wouldn't do it unless Bill gave her something in return.
The only way she'd get an abortion if he bought her breast implants, which he did. she got rid of the baby.
I despise her, and she has not stopped embarrassing our family. It's like, can you just go away? Can you just leave us alone? Go find another married man, because this is what she does for a living. She strips, or she gets with married men.
In the end, said the Halls, Bonnie told Frances about the affair as a final act of desperation, an attempt to hold on to Bill, who was about to drop her.
I think she finally thought, hey, I'm losing this man. I'm losing my bread and butter here. Her sugar daddy. This girl was not in love with Bill. I don't even think she knows what the word love means.
Of course, Bonnie sees things very differently.
They've really gone after you with names.
Of course, and I understand where the Halls are coming from. It's a pretty big pill to swallow when your husband wants to divorce you after 32 years. And of course they're never going to say anything good about me.
Do you want to clear it up? Were you an exotic dancer?
I worked at a strip club, yes. And that was way
as a dancer?
Before, yes. And that was a mistake I regret that. No one's perfect.
But the fake Facebook account, stalking Frances, the abortion in exchange for breast implants, none of that ever happened, said Bonnie.
For her to sit there and say that I switched a baby's life that was growing inside of me, coming from a man that I love dearly, for a breast augmentation, ridiculousness.
Each woman clung to her truth. The battle for Bill raged.
He couldn't stop Bonnie and really couldn't stop Frances, really.
Sounds like two hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
Then, about a week before Bill's death, the hurricanes collided. Not on the road. Not yet. This war was waged via text.
You're getting text messages from Bonnie of the two of them having sex.
Coming up, an expert provides a demonstration that seems to show the SUVs never even touched.
That's simple physics.
When Dateline Unforgettable continues. The battle over Bill Hall Jr. had gone on for weeks, and it all led up to a confrontation about a week before his death. Bill and Frances met at this hotel. She said they were trying to work things out. But then, Bonnie showed up at the front desk,
saying she was his wife and she needed to get access to his room, and my dad told him, no, she's not my wife. My wife is here with me.
Security asked Bonnie to leave, though she insists she never claimed to be Bill's wife. But all parties agree. That night, an all-out war began via text.
You're getting text messages from Bonnie of the two of them having sex.
Pictures of sexual positions.
Photos with captions like, "This is what he really likes, you fat old woman."
Normally, the mistress keeps a very low profile.
She wanted to make sure I knew now she was in the picture.
Did she ever? Many of the messages are too graphic to show, but you can get a good sense of them from these excerpts. Let me know if you want some good juicy pics of me and your hubby. You stupid old person, keep fixing yourself up. Maybe he'll find you more attractive.
What's the worst text message she sent you?
The hollow bitch.
She actually called you
hollow
because
of my hysterectomy.
Complete with a diagram to reinforce the point. Bonnie admits she sent those nasty texts.
You have to imagine, though, that people are going to see this and they're going to think that some of those text messages are cruel.
Never sent her pictures of me and Bill having sexual intercourse. What I did send her pictures of was 3 butt pics of me. And that's because she infuriated me, because she told me that my butt looked like a broken saddlebag. It looked like a broken toilet seat. Trust me, she was going at me very hard.
In fact, Bonnie says it was Frances who started the text war.
Plain and simple, I was defending myself.
The text that Frances said hurt her the most was the one where you called her hollow and sent the diagram of a woman who had had a hysterectomy. That is cruel. That would hit a woman hard.
And I'm not happy about that.
Why did you do it?
Because I was pissed at her. She was telling me vicious, ugly things.
Did you send any back to her that were nasty as well?
Not really, no.
Because it'd be hard not to engage.
Well, yeah, I started to at the hotel, but I think I did 1 or 2.
Had him in the palm of your hand and couldn't keep him. Frances wrote to Bonnie, "Keep sending. Fatal attraction. Cops need all the pics."
I couldn't keep up. I text slow. This girl's young. She knows technology.
Bonnie says Frances more than held her own. "Don't flatter yourself. He's been cheating on you with me." But, says Frances, the nastier texts Bonnie received didn't come from her. She says Bill sent them.
Bill grabbed the phone and he said, "Let me take care of her."
No, he didn't. That was her. It was her sending those text messages. Bill wouldn't have never disrespected me like that.
But if there was any doubt that she'd been following the Halls, she seemed to confirm it herself by sending photos of their house and Francis's car.
Why were you sending those pictures?
To piss her off, to defend myself.
Why? What are you? I mean, you're the
Her
one-
telling me that
but-
Bill didn't love me, her telling me that Bill was using me,
But Bonnie, you're the one who's having the affair with Bill. So why are you attacking
because
his
she was
wife?
attacking me. And I will defend myself.
1 week after that text message feud came the car chase that left Bill Hall dead. Nearly 3 years after that, Francis Hall went on trial for murder. Prosecutors Stephanie Paulison and Scott Simpson laid out the case for the jury.
We understand why she was angry, but that's not justification to go attempt to run down your husband's mistress and kill him in the process.
The star witness for the prosecution? Bonnie Contreras.
I started to get hit from behind.
Bonnie told the jury how she watched with horror as she believed Francis deliberately knocked Bill off the road.
I see Bill with the truck. And I see him fly off the motorcycle.
Bonnie said she later discovered Francis's daughter Nikki Hall had left a message on her voicemail during the car chase, a message that seemed to speak to Francis's intent that evening.
Told you to watch your back, you stupid slut.
What does that tell you? That they were out to cause harm to somebody.
This is not an accident.
Tim Lovett was the state's collision reconstruction expert. He said the evidence showed Francis chased and hit Bonnie.
That Escalade definitely hit that Range Rover at least 2, maybe 3 times.
But Francis's defense attorneys, Lee Cutter and Gene Brown, said investigators made a big mistake when they bought into the story of Bonnie Contreras.
Everyone got their information from one person at the scene. That's Bonnie. And Bonnie lied her ass off.
Defense accident reconstructionist Charles Rubel said there was no physical evidence to back up Bonnie's claims that Francis had hit her over and over again. No evidence, he said, the SUVs had even touched.
Not even once.
Remember how Bonnie said her purse flew forward off the seat when Francis hit her? I sat down with Charles Rubel when he had a pretty unique way to explain why he thought Bonnie was lying about the purse. He brought out a couple of toy cars, like something from my kid's playroom, and a coin to help prove his point, which I thought was pretty cool.
This is her purse in her car. I get hit from the rear. Where's my purse go? It doesn't dump in the front. That's simple physics.
In fact, he said, the purse falling forward supports Francis's claims that Bonnie was repeatedly slamming on her brakes.
She does a sudden brake, and she's moving like this. Then the purse would go into the floorboard. Bonnie Contreras is not telling the truth.
What's more, both defense and prosecution agreed Bonnie was wrong about her contention that Bill's motorcycle was struck from behind. Evidence showed the motorcycle actually collided with the side of Francis's SUV.
She can't believe a damn thing she said on there.
In closing arguments, the defense said Bill's death was simply a terrible accident, and Francis Hall had suffered enough.
She's been living in hell for 3 years. Let her go home. Let her be with her family. And let her warn her husband.
But the prosecution told the jury Francis must be held accountable for her actions.
Of course the defendant hated Bonnie Contreras. We don't blame her for that. Any wife would. What we do blame her for is getting in her Escalade, chasing after Bonnie, and then veering into Bill. There's your felony murder.
The jury deliberated into the night. Who would they believe? Coming up, the verdict. When Dateline Unforgettable continues. As the jury deciding Francis Hall's fate deliberated into the evening hours of September 8th, 2016, neither side felt confident. And then, just before 8:45 p.m., the jury had its verdict.
The jury found the defendant, Francis Hall,
Guilty of murder and aggravated assault. Francis's friends and family were shocked.
It was the worst feeling in my life.
It was a moment Francis herself did not seem prepared for.
you were found guilty and you were facing possibly life behind bars.
Yes, I was. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home to Bill. I was like, I can't do this.
But things weren't over yet for Francis. There was still a second phase of trial, sentencing. Texas law allows the defendant to be sentenced by either the judge or the jury. Francis chose the jury, the same one that found her guilty. 4 days after the verdict, the players returned to the courtroom for the final act of this real-life soap opera. The defense believed it had found a secret weapon in the Texas Criminal Code.
We said, this caveat, this was written for Francis Hall, if anyone ever.
The law calls it sudden passion, essentially that the defendant was immediately provoked to a degree of anger that would make an ordinary person incapable of cool reflection. The defense told the jury sudden passion gripped Francis when she spotted Bill and Bonnie on the road.
She sees this woman who has not let up and tried to ruin her life for the last month.
The stakes were enormous. A finding of sudden passion could drastically reduce Francis's sentence, from possible life in prison to a maximum of 20 years, and a minimum of just 2. Relatives of Francis and Bill Hall begged the jury to be lenient.
If there's any way that you can find in your heart to give her a lighter sentence, I'm begging you.
And then, for the first time, the jury heard from Francis Hall directly.
You don't understand. I love this man heart and soul. I gave him my life. I would have never hurt him, never.
In her final arguments, defense attorney Lee Cutter insisted Francis Hall's actions were a textbook example of sudden passion.
The text messages, the calls, the taunting, those will probably make you really hate someone. But never having seen them until they drive by in your car, if that's not sudden passion where you are incapable of thinking clearly, I don't know what is.
But prosecutor Scott Simpson told jurors not to be swayed by emotion.
You shouldn't, for 1 second, feel ashamed or bad for doing what you believe to be right.
After about 3 hours of deliberations, the jury was ready. All eyes were on Bonnie Contreras when she arrived to hear the sentence, and on Francis Hall, too. Would she get life in prison or a chance at freedom?
We unanimously find the defendant caused the death of Bill Hall under the immediate influence of sudden passion. We assess her punishment for a term of 2 years.
2 years, the absolute minimum sentence.
What is going through your mind when you hear that? Because things were looking bad.
Oh, yes. I was like, thank you, Jesus. I can't do this.
And she did. On September 7th, 2018, after serving her sentence, Francis walked out of prison a free woman. Back to the embrace of the family who stood by her side.
Does 2 years fit?
No. 2 years for a life that you take? No, absolutely not. Bill's never coming back. Why? Because she decided to make a very irresponsible decision and cause this.
A decision which Bonnie said cut short her dream of a future with Bill.
Do you think there was any chance that he was playing both of you?
No.
He wanted his cake and
He
eat it too?
No. He wanted out of his marriage.
Do you regret now ever meeting Bill?
No, I don't. I don't regret loving him. I will always carry that man in my heart. I love him so much.
As for Francis, even in those early days after the trial, she said she did regret her decision to make a U-turn that October evening.
It was my choice that I turned around, and for that I am so remorseful, and I will live with that for the rest of my life.
But Francis says, make no mistake, there's only one true love story here. The 32-year marriage of Francis and Bill Hall. My interview with Francis was truly unforgettable. She was so emotional throughout, and I'll always remember after we were done speaking, she hugged me. She released her embrace and then hugged me again, very tightly. I knew then and there how broken she was. But one of the most memorable moments for me, really in maybe all of my Datelines, was when I asked Francis if she had anything to say to Bonnie.
I pity her because she has to continue living and looking for the right man. I've had the best man in my life. I will never love another man like I loved Bill. Once you have the best, no looking back.
Except for he cheated on you.
He had this much bad, but he had this much good. And he might have done what he did, but I know he loved me. Call me ignorant, call me stupid. But I loved Bill Hall Jr. till the day I died.